Welcome to RDO Podcast. You have officially joined the resistance. In this episode, I have a very special guest, Dr. Marwyn Bhanderi, founder and host of the amazing podcast Back to Being, and he's also a doctor of chiropractic. In this episode, we cover a ton of stuff, to be honest, and really I think I'll just let you find out for yourself. I don't want to spoil the good stuff. So I'll have some clips, from the episode posted up on YouTube. I'll also have a link to Marwyn's podcast, as well as any other resources from this episode in the description below. If you like this, don't forget to follow, subscribe, you know the deal. So I don't typically do an intro like this, but I did have some technical difficulties in terms of recording in like the first minute or so. So I've kind of had to, just make this to have an intro. So in this case, we lead in with what I just told you about Dr. Bhanderi, and then I kind of turn it over to him and let him speak a bit about how he got started with the podcast and how he really went on this journey of enlightenment personally, everything from his chosen profession to where he is, what he's doing in life. So that's that. Without any further ado, I'm going to let you jump right into the episode and get started. So here we go. The new journey, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I call myself, first and foremost a human being. We're all just a speck of light in this magnificent experience of life. So who am I? I mean, nothing really. And no, but at the same time, we're all something, right? We all have something unique to offer to this world in our own unique ways, and that's what makes life wonderful. I got into chiropractic 7 years ago. It was when I started a meditation program, beginning of 2013. Before that, we're all spiritual. We just don't know we're spiritual, but I wasn't really into spirituality. Growing up, I saw my parents fighting with religion and family conflicts. So I never really got into any of that. So I didn't really have I guess I was yearning for something greater, because before that, after the 08, 09, 010, around that time, I graduated from college. And things weren't the best. And it wasn't, some people will blame it on the economic situation of the time, or whatnot, you with the housing market crash, but really it was me. My perspective of the world was very dark, and that reflected in the outcomes of my life and the choices I made, and I wasn't really getting anywhere with my career, relationships, etc. So what happened was, I started this meditation program. A couple of months later, I ended up finding chiropractic, or a lot of people in chiropractic will say chiropractic found me. It was just the right time at the right place. And the reason is because the school I went to, Life University, they had a reflection pool and a sign that said vitalism. And vitalism is the notion that everything in the universe is self-healing, self-maintaining, self-organizing, and self-conscious. And it's just a light bulb went off in my head. Like, I felt a vibration within me as soon as I set foot in front of that. I just knew I had to do this. I didn't even know what a chiropractor did, to be honest. But it was the idea. I knew the idea was going to be big, and I realized, and it was funny at the moment. I always share this with everyone, is that in that moment I thought to myself, there's a profession with this philosophy, and you don't have to be a monk. Hell yeah, I'm in.
Sign me up.
Yeah, pretty much. But then I realized, there's a plethora of people and a plethora of different paths to go down. They're not necessarily professions, but there are many paths. There are professions too, but many paths that people can go down with a similar philosophy but a different application to that philosophy. And that's what makes life wonderful. And that kind of ties into what my podcast originally was about, was trying to bring people with this philosophy, this holistic, vitalistic philosophy, to come together to show people that it's not just me and my peers that are crazy in chiropractic, but actually there's a whole spectrum of people all over the world, in all different walks of life, all different backgrounds, who are tuning into this great power within, and we're just applying it differently. Maybe you're a French bakery and you have the most exquisite cooking, I mean, the croissants, but the way you can make them, it's just a different energy and vibration you're using to it. You're conscious about how you're cooking it, the ingredients you're using, and you're just creating a whole different experience. And so it doesn't have to be just in health or spirituality. It's because everyone's spiritual, they just don't know it. Everyone's serving at some level. They just don't, they think that it's like, some people think spirituality is just being in a yoga pose all day long or sitting in silence for 2 to 5 hours. If you're serving people, you're spiritual. So, I mean, who isn't doing that? And no one's insignificant. We're all doing something. So that's a little bit about me. And then obviously with the events of this year, a podcast turned into not only, originally it was to bring people in early 30s starting their own business, a holistic practice, because that's what I'm doing right now. So I thought I'm going to help myself by talking to people, and other people get help too. But then it turned into, the nature of life is, when you put things into motion, it builds momentum. So by doing things, magical things happen. And my interviews, I've interviewed a whole range of people. The themes are pretty much the same, but it's really applicable to anyone, because the topics are really universal in nature.
Yeah, I feel that. And I see that when you speak, and, I've had a chance to check out a few interviews so far, but there is something there that's happening when two people are engaging in conversation, or whether you're treating someone in chiropractic. It's not just what we think of in terms of business, where there's a monetary exchange. It's actually, there's an energetic exchange. There's an exchange of karma and intention that I think is that spiritual aspect that you're talking about. And I really think that's what makes the world go round at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned that, the sun just came out a little bit here, so you must be saying something right.
We'll see if I can keep my lighting right as well, because this window, it does the same thing. It gets super bright. I look like a ghost, and then it gets, dims down. So hopefully
you're fine. No worries about that. But what you're saying is absolutely true. And this is, I was very lucky to have great mentors. I still have great mentors. And, they taught me early on the philosophy that is not just of chiropractic, but it's philosophy of life. It's one of my mentors also said, the doctor of chiropractic means teacher of the philosophy of life. And you don't need to be a doctor of chiropractic to be a teacher of philosophy of life. It's just life experience, right? And what it means is, and one of the principles of healing that for me is so profound, it's when two become one, the unison of the subconscious. Like, if I'm able to dive into someone's subconscious, healing can happen. And I don't heal someone. I'm a facilitator of healing. I hold space. And my job is to empower the person to elicit a healing within them. And they are the ones that heal. Like, the greatest doctor is always within. No doctor on the earth can heal anybody. Only you can heal yourself. What doctors do, if they're good doctors in any profession, is that they create that energy, that vibration, and they use tools, they use different, whatever they do. Everyone's got different methods to their madness. But if they have that vibration, if they help you create the contract with yourself, it's not so much a contract with the practice or the doctor that I think is important. It's a contract with the self. Then healing can occur. But if you are not allowing us, if you don't make that decision with yourself that you want to make a profound change, that you want to become whole, you want to not just be a part of the sums, but the whole sum itself, then it won't occur. But if you do make that commitment, you would, not only will you heal, but you'll transform, you'll transcend, and you will allow whatever's inside of your soul, inside of your consciousness, to come to life. And so this is what excites me on a daily basis with people I serve, is to see them light up, literally. When I adjust someone, I think about lighting them up all the time. And I'm not talking about a joint, I'm talking about when the mind, body, and soul is connected. And people, people say, oh, that I felt that down to my toes, or there's sometimes people will laugh or they'll cry. And it's just because they haven't felt that connection in such a long time. And it's just a gentle. All I'm doing is giving them a gentle reminder, but they themselves are reminding themselves of how magnificent they are. And that's where this is something that if someone masters how to do, I mean, it doesn't matter the title. You can create a healing energy and vibration anywhere in the world.
That's really interesting that you mentioned that, because like I mentioned to you in side conversation that I had pretty not severe but moderate scoliosis like all my life, and then I finally found chiropractic through family and friends. And at first I didn't notice a huge deal. It took a few adjustments before I actually got aligned properly, but when I did, I mean, it was just incredible how much relief. And it was more than a physical relief. Like, it was mind and body and spirit. There's some connectivity there, and even just allowing that spinal fluid to flow, and for things to just be how they should be for the first time. There's no words for it. I mean, it really was a very liberating experience. So since then, I've fully corrected it, and it's just,
wow.
I think more people, my spine is totally straight now, and I just think more people need to know about that. Like, it could be your shoulder, it could be your knee, it could be your hip, your back, whatever, but there's a physical element that transcends into the other layers of your being.
Absolutely.
I'm curious to see, because oftentimes the holistic approach, I see that more popular amongst chiropractors, and with medical doctors. I don't know if it's the background tied to pharmaceuticals and medication. What do you think it is that triggers that interest from a doctor's perspective in the holistic approach? Does it just depend on the person, or does it have something to do with their field of medicine?
Well, chiropractic, originally is still not part of medicine. It's a distinct, separate profession. But I do work with all different types of practitioners, and I didn't realize when I started on this journey that there are holistic minded people in dentistry, in medicine. I mean, you got homeopaths, naturopaths, physios, acupuncturists, and chiropractic. The reason why so many chiropractors are holistic is because that's how we started. It was always a profession that was based on natural healing. The B.J. Palmer, he was a developer of chiropractic, said nature needs no help, just no interference. So it was always, and the D.D. Palmer, who was the man credited with founding chiropractic in 1895, he was a magnetic healer, a spiritual healer of sorts, and he apparently channeled this teaching from an orthopedist at that time, A.T. Stills, because orthopedics was, at least at that time in America, was very similar to chiropractic, holistic profession. And you'll see this in like France and some places in Europe where it's still very holistic and vitalistic. But in America, it's got consumed by medicine, so it's lost its identity. Chiropractic has always been natural, without drugs, without surgery. It's really just about getting that life force in the body to flow all through the brain and nervous system out to every cell, tissue, and organ in the body, to create that vitality, to create the optimal function, to maximize the potential within. That's what chiropractic has always been about in its truest form. And now, unfortunately, some people have shifted away from that, but I see the biggest transformations in people who practice with this philosophy. So it's the original philosophy was always there. And it's not, chiropractic wasn't the first one to come up with this. I mean, there are many ancient arts if you go into the East, in ancient Greece, you see paintings of these things, or even hieroglyphics in Egypt. You see people putting hands on backs. I mean, in India, you have all kinds of weird techniques that look like chiropractic. I don't even know what they're called. You've probably seen some funny YouTube videos.
Like the street massages. They got their cups, and like they have their whole process. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, wherever you're in the world, I'd probably go to someone that has good references. I wouldn't just go to some random person.
Yeah,
it's very important to make sure someone knows what they're doing.
Yeah, you don't want somebody just cracking your neck and trying to get noises. Yeah. No.
And even like if you look at yoga and Pilates, what's their philosophy? It's about making sure the spine is in alignment, it's flexible, it's able to move in its natural ranges of motion to allow the energy to flow. Like in yoga, a lot of people talk about the Kundalini, the energy that rises from the bottom of the sacrum to this head, inside of our spine. You know, I mean, we have CSF fluid, cerebral spinal fluid, like your sacrum, right, which is at the bottom of your spine, like a pump. And if you don't have proper motion, then you won't be able to clean the nutrients through your spinal cord, your brain. I mean, you won't be able to clean the waste and you won't be able to get the right nutrients there. So this philosophy is not new. It just chiropractic packaged it. And then the second part of your question is about why perhaps doctors of medicine or other doctors seem to have a more allopathic approach, like drugs, surgery, not as holistic. And, you know, I can only speak from, you know, I have friends that are in the profession. They're wonderful people. I mean, I don't think most people in any profession are bad people. They all are good people. And, you know, I can only speak on from what I've seen and what I've experienced myself. You would have to ask them for more direct response. But from my opinion, it goes to their training. I mean, I've studied some of the same physiology textbooks that they've studied, and their application to the human condition, dis-ease in the body, lack of ease, because the reason I say dis-ease is because when we have a plethora of names, like we have a million, I mean, you just keep adding more diagnoses and diagnoses. And it's important to know what's going on with the patient. Absolutely. I think it's important. But ultimately, what is causing that is there's an imbalance in the system. There's a disconnection. Something's not functioning properly. What's the root cause of that? And so that's what, like, holistic is in the word, right? Holism. Like, you have to look at the whole person. Like, you don't just look at, okay, they have foot pain, then let's just go to the foot doctor. No, we're going to make sure the whole, not only is I mean, from my perspective, not only if the whole spine is in alignment, the brain and nervous system in alignment, but then beyond that, which is not chiropractic, but it is part of life, and it is part of healing and health and living a good life, is your lifestyle. And are you moving? Are you exercising? Do you yoga, meditation, breath work? What are you eating? Are you eating toxic food like GMOs, like pesticides? Or are you eating literally plastic, like all this fake food? Or are you eating like real food? You know, or how are you thinking? You know, have you been taught how to manage relationships, how to manage yourself? You know, we have some of the best schools in the world. I mean, universities, but one thing we never are taught is how to manage ourselves. So you can say it's a mistake, but I don't think it is, to be honest. I think, how can it be a mistake? I mean, you're telling me over thousands of years of evolution, humanity, that we didn't realize that we had to teach children how to manage themselves, what to eat. Come on, man. It can't be. But like, to just finish answering, as I got on a little tangent here, but that's just to finish answering your question about about why some people are more allopathic, or what we call mechanistic in their approach. I think it's just their training. You know, they're not bad people. It's just their training, the way they're taught in the schools. Now, who writes the medical textbooks? I mean, who funds them? Follow the money. You know, it goes to the pharmaceutical companies. That's right. So so a lot of times people get brainwashed into a certain way of practicing, and one of the most, you know, what does doctor actually mean? It means teacher. So it doesn't mean you have to have this PhD or a doctorate. Everyone's teaching something. Now, if you're a great teacher, not only would you be teaching, in my opinion, and if you go even a little bit further, if you say you're a scientist, because anyone that goes in any health field has to take some sort of science courses or background in science, at least a prerequisite or some, you know, basic courses. Now, a scientist must always ask questions. It doesn't matter if we're taught something that may be outdated or may be funded by something, who cares, whatever. But when do we start asking questions as practitioners? If you know what, when you're in school, you're under so much stress. I get it. I don't blame anyone. Even I was, you know, it's not easy when you're going through the program. But when you're in practice, you realize at some point in your life, you have to start asking questions. What am I doing? Is it actually working? Am I getting the results I want? If not, it's time to reassess. So some people do this, and I know people have done this in all different fields. Some people, don't seem to do this. Why that is, I can't answer for them. But again, I think it has to go back to follow the money, and or it could just be people just don't know. I mean, maybe people are that naive. I find that hard to believe, but it's possible.
Yeah, I think there is a conflict of interest presented, not just, on a personal level, but within the industry. If every symptom yields a profit for a medicine that treats a symptom but doesn't fix anything, then we've just kind of stacked this or snowballed this avalanche situation together where it just keeps going and keeps going. And now there's 1,000 new medications every year treating the same symptoms over and over, and then another medication for your symptoms, or I should say the side effects of those initial medications. So it does get kind of haywired into this weird system where it's no longer even about health and well-being. So
yeah, and this is a great tragedy. It's just ironically, as we were just before going on air with you, I was listening to a podcast, and the guy was talking about, of course, in the world right now we have this quote unquote pandemic, but compared to like the opioid crisis, compared to like medical errors, I mean, these numbers are in the hundreds of thousands a year.
Yes.
Compared to like children getting kidnapped, 200,000 a year. Like this, he was just throwing out statistics, and I'm like, where is our what are we really focusing on here? I mean, we need to. There are far great, and there's also something that, if you look at something that really annoys me a lot of time when you go back to the food, and it kind of ties into like all this like government controlled stuff, is people on food stamps who are on a lower socioeconomic barrier. Obviously, it's not necessarily so much only minorities, but at a certain period of time, it was directed towards minorities. But now, I mean, there's a lot of people that fall into poverty, so there's a lot of people on food stamps. But people on food, but there's definitely some sort of agenda there, in my opinion. And I mean, everyone can look it up. Listeners, you can look it up yourself. But on food stamps, you can't buy organic food. You can only buy junk food. So why is that? I mean, if we're so concerned about helping people and making sure people are healthy, why can't they buy healthy food? And then why is there even toxic food available? And why is it marketed to people? And why aren't people educated about it? I mean, there's a lot of questions here. I mean, I know most of the answers to them, but I think it's more inquisitive and more powerful if people self-realize and go find these questions themselves. Because until someone, it's something I learned on my spiritual journey, is until you self-realize, self-actualize, and self-realize something, you won't really understand it. It's probably why I was falling asleep in my classes all throughout my life in school, because that's not how we learn, like getting lectured to. You have to experience it.
Yeah, we learn through immersion. We learn through action. I was the same way. Just like I was probably the worst student from like the last 4 years of school, to be honest. But I mean, it's an ineffective way of learning. It's an ineffective way of conveying information to people. It really is.
There are some group of people. There's a group of people that is effective to, maybe like 20%. I don't know the statistic. I'm just throwing it off my head. But we all have different learning styles, right? Some of us are visual, auditory, kinesthetic, whatever, draw. I mean, we have all different senses that we use. So we need to find out how that person learns. And not everyone's meant to be the same thing. Like we don't, like someone's supposed to, there are some schools nowadays, in different types of schools, where you learn the basic curriculum, but then you spend more time on, like, if you're really good at basketball, then you'll do that, or you'll play music, or you'll draw pictures, or whatever it may be. But we need more of that. And you're probably aware of this. I think after I had graduated high school, I noticed some of the areas in the country, and this is the United States, where they started taking away programs like arts, drama, physical education, and this is absurd. Or even taking away like playtime or recess time.
Yep.
I mean, what are you trying to do to the children?
they think they're going to increase academic performance by allocating more time to it, but it actually, in my opinion and in my experience as a student in that system, it made it more difficult to learn because you didn't get to get outside, get that sunlight, get that energy circulated, through, like you're already in the building for way too long out of the day. It's like it's already an 8-hour day, sometimes longer, so they did the same thing at my elementary school. I think it was second grade. They cut the outside time in half. So
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It doesn't make any sense. I always joke with my mother. I say, "Oh, school, that's just babysitting for parents. You don't actually learn anything."
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's evolved to be more like that. And not that I know everything about it, but I look at, some of the higher performing countries in what is it, Switzerland, that always stands out. They have max like 4 hours of school time a day.
Wow.
Like 4 hours. Yeah, that's it. Totally different lifestyle, but they're, one of the highest performing in the world. So
yeah, I think you're 100% right. I haven't looked at the stats as of recently, but I know maybe this is like 5 to 10 years back, and I highly doubt it's changed. It may have got worse, in fact. But at that time, the last time I checked the stats, the United States was the last in industrialized nations in their math and science scores and reading scores.
Last time I checked, we were like 26th or 28th, basically what you're saying, at the bottom of the barrel in terms of performance. So when it comes to this overall health, mind, body, and spirit, is there a certain place that it has to stem from? Does it stem from body first? Does it stem from mind first? Or is it a collective integration all at once?
That's a fantastic question. And what I can say is it depends on the individual. For me, the mind is so profound. Like, one of the things people don't know about yoga is it's not, the poses are like 10% of it. It's the mind, the physical aspect. Like, I did a training program when I was in chiropractic college, and we always used to incorporate we always used to move first, like move our bodies. Then we did some form of meditation or breath work, and then we continued training. We were training chiropractic. So, I mean, if you were a martial artist, you would train martial arts. If you were a cook, you probably, I don't know what you train in the morning at 6 a.m. cooking. Maybe you cook something, I don't know. but you do whatever you got to do. I don't, like, maybe you practice your postures for catering. I don't know. but it's these elements of mind, body, and soul, like moving, breathing, meditating. It's very important. Move, breathe, meditate, mind, body, soul. But how this occurs, how this relates to healing, is your question, is it depends, because when we access the body, sometimes the mind there's such a big blockage in the mind. You have to use the body as an access point. Like, I look at the spine, like in my work as a chiropractor, the spine is a lever. It's just an access point. I'm looking for an access point, and I only go where the person allows me to go. I don't just go anywhere I want to. And sometimes you can only go so deep in that particular session, because that's all they can handle. And sometimes it's the other way around. The physical body is so tense and it's so shut off that I can't access the physical body. So then I have to go to the mental body, the mind. And I've been trained in methodologies that I can help people with their mental state through the different things I've learned. So yes, it really depends on the mind. Both are going to, either one is going to affect the other. Everything's connected. You cannot just only affect the body and not affect the mind. You can't only affect the mind and not affect the body. You're going to have an effect no matter which way you do it. But for me, it's always important to see what I need to access in order to get the best results. So it depends.
That makes sense. Because like you said, sometimes the physical is so blocked, so inaccessible. You have to start with the mind. You may have to start with some energetic focus and get them to a state, just depending on the person. So kind of
Yeah, and
like,
sometimes it's the other way. Yeah, you're right, 100%. And sometimes the other way around.
yeah,
So
like different doors to the same building, so to speak.
yeah,
Okay. That's interesting,
absolutely.
because I think oftentimes people get wrapped up in the idea that they have to force something one way, like I have to force myself to start working out. And sometimes you do, or I have to force myself to meditate. They're all beneficial, but you may start with one and put yourself in a better position to approach the other. So I
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that.
I had a strange introduction to meditation because it was open eye meditation. Uh,
Mm.
so, for me, that was a bit weird. I was like, what do you mean open eye meditation?
I've never
But then
even
I
heard of
started
that till
thinking,
just now.
yeah, it's basically just focusing on a point, like a point of light
Yeah.
kind of thing. But then I realized as I started just learning more about spirituality and the mind and the brain and everything, that someone going for a run is a meditation, riding a bike, reading a book, climbing a mountain. Everyone's form of meditation is completely different. Some people, when I'm in the shower, I get great downloads from source or wherever they come from.
Yeah,
So
we
I
talked
mean,
about that. The wisdom's in the water.
yeah.
I'm
So
the
I
same
mean,
way. Yeah.
so who says you have to sit in a dark room, cross-legged with your eyes closed for 10 hours? I mean,
Yeah.
meditation, the ultimate objective is not to it's like you see people doing extensive yoga meditation, movement practices, mindfulness stuff, and sometimes they spend an hour or two on it, and this is fine. This is what happens when you're a beginner. You're a novice. You're not even a novice or a beginner. You're just at the very precipice of if you can even say a start. So you need this extra time in training, and it's frustrating because like, I mean, for me in the beginning, this is like nothing happening.
Yeah.
but the point is not to expect anything, right? It's just to experience, and this is the whole life itself. But having said that, I mean, we should expect. I said it the other day. Let me remind you what I said. I said I don't. I don't have expectations, but I expect to be great, at least the greatest version of myself. So you can't compare yourself to everything around you and everyone else, but if you give it your best shot, then you can be satisfied. But that's your best is change. It's gonna, if you look at the four agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, I think that's what it was. He talks about one of them is always do your best, and your best changes from time to time because you're not gonna be on point A, on 100% every day. Some days may be different, but as long as you did your best with whatever you had that day, whatever tools you had, whatever strength and energy you had, then you can be happy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Your best is going to change from time to time. Like if you're feeling sick or you're feeling down, and feeling sick is an interesting one too, as it just came up, because symptoms are just a language to the body. It's just a language to your life. It's a signal that something's not going right and we need to change something.
Yeah.
So if you pay, so if we're able to listen to our bodies and learn to pick up on these things, that before something becomes a grand problem, right, like a cancer or a heart disease, you can fix it. If you're not paying attention and you keep on going with your life, not altering anything, well, then things get worse over time. But your body is trying to talk to you. So this is another thing that we have to learn as children, I think. We don't have to wait till we have an issue at 45 or 50 to wake up. Why don't we teach young people so they can live a better lifestyle in the first place?
I think that's a great point, and I think that ties into intuition. Like, I feel that's the most important thing to me. Like, intuition to me is more important than education, than formal education, because it's something I can't explain it. I don't think we fully understand, but it's like this internal truth that's always with us. And like you mentioned, we have symptoms. There's an intuitive connection to that that's like that check engine light comes on, and then you're like, huh, if you're able to tune into that inclination, that intuitive sense, then you can go a long way. You can really, like, you kind of how you stumbled into or got started with chiropractic, that was like an intuitive beam of light just shined at you, and you said, hey, I'm gonna go jump into this. So
Yeah. And a lot of times in our life, we don't go with the flow of life, and we resist.
looks like your connection froze up on me. Let me see. Still there?
Oh, yeah. Oh yes, I'm
Okay.
here.
Yeah, it froze up.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I just think each of us are meant to uncover whatever within us, and it's different. But yeah, and then also going back to the sickness thing, it's that it's the healing process. Like we always put in something negative. Oh, they're sick, so they've got to like go away and be depressed for like 3 days. It's like, no, be happy that your body is working. Yeah, you might not feel good for a day. It might not be the best feeling for a day or two, but let your body do its work. And yes, there are definitely certain cases where you need to seek help. You need medical attention or whatever type of care you may need. But most times our body is just working. Like when you have a fever, it's fighting off a foreign invader, virus, bacteria, what it may be, whatever it may be. So, but we suppress these symptoms, and we're actually damaging our body. In the same way, when we suppress our intuition, we're damaging the natural flow of our life, and we're wondering why we're miserable.
Yeah.
But when you have that intuitive, I think when we are first come into this physical form, when we are born, and when we are about to leave, people become the most intuitive. Like a child doesn't really have many filters, and neither do old people. It's just kind of funny. But that's something that we can learn.
No
something
BS.
we can. No, there's not. There's something we can learn from that. It's like the people. It's like from the beginning and at the end, you got it. You're close to source. You got it figured out. You know how to tap into your intuition and go after things. But then in the middle, we screw it up. So we got to keep that vibration in the middle.
Yeah, one of the most profound examples or illustrations of that I've seen is on a show. It's called The Midnight with Duncan Trussell. I don't know. You may have heard of it. I think it came out like close to a year ago, maybe.
Okay. Is it on network television?
It was on Netflix. I'm not sure where else it is, but it was made by the creator of Adventure Time, which is one of my all-time favorites as a kid.
Yeah.
So
that's cool.
It's very trippy, very psychedelic. Check it out.
Yeah, I don't watch network television, but Netflix, I watch it sometimes.
Yeah,
not as much. Not that much, but
I don't even want to get into this subject, but I boycotted it recently for a certain particular film. So yeah.
And anyway. I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I did. Yeah. It was the same. All my circle of friends, a lot of them, just cancel their memberships. But if you don't know what we're talking about, then you just Google it. You'll figure out what we're talking about. Yeah. But or use DuckDuckGo. It might be censored on Google. But anyway, we'll continue.
Yeah. So that part aside, the show is called The Midnight Gospel. The main guy in the show doing it's really weird because he has his own podcast, Duncan Trussell, and the show is actually like a synthesis of his podcast into an animated form. So it's really out there. But he lost his mom to cancer, and at the end of her time, they did an episode on this, and it was very deep, very personal, but there was this subject was covered, and it was incredible how they kind of went into that, and she was saying that she felt more alive than she ever had before in her life. And that's the part that struck me. Like, All of the garbage and everything had just dissolved away, and she was just in this state where she was very happy and felt very alive despite, the circumstance. And that was it was very personal, for him, because that's his mom. I mean, it's a difficult thing, but I thought they did a good job of making, demonstrating the beauty of it as well, just like that she was in a good place in herself before that time came. So I think that kind of ties into what you're talking about, like as a child, and then as we get older, we get closer to that source, if you want to call it that. So, but do you
Definitely.
think
That's a wonderful story.
do you think fear is probably the number one driving factor to what holds us back throughout this process? I mean, we could be talking about being sick, we could be talking about just living, but I think there's some element to fear. Like everything's rooted in fear. All the negativity, all the things that we see on mainstream media, and just everything that I feel makes us sick is actually, seems like it's just all rooted in fear. What are your thoughts on that?
There's definitely a connection there. There's no doubt. If you, I mean, it was Dan Pena a couple of years back who brought me the fruition of knowledge that fear is false evidence appearing real. And yes, I agree with you 100%. Like, if you look at cancer, for example, in 1900, 4% of the population had cancer or something like this. Most people in society didn't even know what cancer was. It wasn't in our consciousness. Now, this is something that I often talk about with my peers, is that if it's not in our consciousness, then it's not likely to form. Because all these things are bombarded day in, day out, whether it's sickness, whether it's you're not good enough to create that business, whether it's you don't look a certain way to get that man or woman, or whatever it may be. And in the media, you're going to die of this, or you can't do that, or it's just fear. It's fear porn.
Yeah.
It's and a lot of our decision making goes on that. Most people are afraid to live. This is a great tragedy. The greatest tragedy, one of the greatest tragedies in the world is not that, is not being able to, is that people are afraid to live. It's ridiculous when you think about it that way.
They kind of go through and never having lived at all. They waited to die through it all instead of actually playing the game and utilizing their time here to be who they could be.
Yeah. And I mean, it's I'm always laughing because I see, I always think, even there are some, things, there are serious things going on in the world today. But I laugh because it's ridiculous, because it's just ridiculous. Because why are we afraid to live? It doesn't actually make any logical sense. The only thing we know for sure is that one day we're going to die. We know two things we know for sure, that anyone that's hearing this now, that you were born, well, supposedly, I don't remember my birth, but I was born. I mean, I'm sure it's blueprinted in me somewhere. I just need to retrace it. There's probably some mystical person that can help me do that. But anyways, and we're going to die.
Yeah.
But why are we so afraid of dying? I don't understand, because every second in our body, a cell is dying and a new one is being born, or the cell is regenerating. So we have this cycle of life and death occurring every nanosecond. It's not happens at 0 and it happens at age 100. It's not like that. And it's a cycle of life happening all the time, constantly. It's a dynamic flow. It never stays the same. No two moments are the same. The beauty of the human being is that it's new in every moment. So having this fear of what other people think, for example, man, this is like the worst thing. It's like, what a waste of energy. It's a waste thought. Like you're literally shunning yourself from your greatness. Imagine if Muhammad Ali was like, I'm scared to go fight, instead of saying I'm the greatest. Nobody wouldn't even know he was. In my opinion, was he the best fighter in history? Maybe not. But we all think of him as that because that's how he marketed himself. And what fear did he have? And he left a mark beyond his sport. I mean, he said things that today, I mean, we would get kicked off everything if we said the things he said today. But I'm saying,
all the politically correct, all the nonsense. You brought up the perfect example, because I just caught a clip of Mike Tyson the other day talking about Muhammad Ali, and he obviously has, a lot of reverence for him, and he got choked up speaking about it, because he said straight up, man, he would die for this. Like that. He's like, I'm not great. We're not even, he's a different kind of person. And he relinquished any fear of death. He wouldn't quit. That's what makes him such a powerful figure. It's, you can go over the technicalities of who's the best boxer. Well, in his prime, you could argue he was the greatest of all time, but everyone gets older. What didn't change about him was he did not care. He would die for it. He was the greatest in terms of willpower. And I don't think there's any argument there, but that ties right into what we're saying. Like, that fear of death holds people back. So reverse engineer that. No fear of death. And I don't mean to, say just like take any risk and don't think, but I mean, relinquishing your fear of death is the most liberating thing you can do. And it's easier said than done, but
absolutely. And a derivative of fear of death is fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of making mistakes, fear of being rejected. Like any of these things, any of these fears, you're going to die slowly. Yep. So that's why I say it's a derivative of death, because you might not be thinking of fear of dying, but you're dying a little every time you don't go after something you want to do. And maybe it's not the right thing for you to do, but how the hell are you going to know if you don't try? If you don't go in the ring and get knocked out, how are you going to go back to train and improve? You don't even know how to improve because you haven't even gone into the match yet. So it doesn't make any sense. It's like someone's like, oh, I'm going to open my business. Well, it's like, it's been 10 years, man. Like, when are you going to do it? So I don't have the resources. All right. Well, the guy down the street, he didn't have any resources either. He did it. I mean, what's your excuse? I'm not saying it's easy. And don't get me wrong. I mean, everyone's situation is different. Some people grow up in harsh places. I understand that environment is terrible, but it's the cliche, when there's will, there's a way, and it's the human will. It's a determination, a sacrifice that you will win. We're all hardwired, in my opinion, to win. I don't think we're not hardwired to lose. No. But losing on the journey is what gets you to the win. So if you don't accept that you're going to lose along the way, then you're never going to win. Who has ever gone a whole? I mean, what I mean is, like, no one of any stature that we look up to today has had the perfect life, but we look up at them because they overcame something and they became great at whatever they did. That's why we look up to them. And we all have that story within us waiting to unfold. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I think it's quite the opposite of what people think. The people who are the most accomplished have the most failures under their belt. That's how you learn. That is the process. Failure is the process of success. And you mentioned those tiny deaths along the way. Each one is like, man, that couldn't be any more true. They say, a coward dies 1,000 times. A hero dies once, Wow. So that's, I think that's it, man. I think that is one of the huge takeaways that people with that alone can reformat their perspective. Like, okay, what am I actually doing with my life right now? Like, what is literally holding me back? And I think when you take the time to assess that, you realize it's nothing. It's hard, it takes work, but nothing is literally holding you back from doing anything.
Right. And, you know, it always goes back to intention and intention. Like, are you trying to, are you becoming love? And love is a synchronicity and synthesis of complementary opposites. It's not actually a feeling. It's a state of being. It goes back to what we started talking about earlier in meditation. The whole purpose of it is to be in that state constantly. It's not something you have to, the reason you train so much for anything is so you can be in that state 24/7. Maybe not 24/7 perfectly, but most of the time. But like, if you have the right intention and intention, what are you afraid of? Why, you know, because you're gonna make mistakes. But I don't remember who said this or where it was in a David Guetta song like 10 years back, but it said art cannot be criticized because every mistake is a new creation. And then but you know, but if you have the right intention and intention, even if you do make a mistake and you're not going out there to hurt people or cause violence or harm, mistakes are fine. Fall forward, right? We've heard this.
Right.
And then I actually came up with an acronym earlier last year for failure, was feeling alive in life's unexpected reality expedition. That's what failure is.
Yeah, I like that. That's a tongue twister, but yeah. It's like, hey, let me write that down.
Feeling alive in life's unexpected reality expedition. That's what it is.
I love it. I think sometimes we get so wrapped up in the lows that it's easy to become overwhelmed. Like, you have to just let go and laugh sometimes. Even if life is terrible right now, you have to find a way to just take a deep breath and let go and see the next thing, like see beyond the horizon a bit. And this mind body wasteland that we're kind of born into, and it doesn't have to be that way, but I think people fall victim to that, and then they just start spiraling downward when they could be spiraling upwards. And you know, I wanted to bring this up because you mentioned in a recent interview of yours, the Crump episode.
Oh, yeah.
That you did. Yeah. So you mentioned in that episode that a colleague of yours had recently passed away from overdose. And that's obviously a delicate subject. And I want to approach this respectfully because it's devastating, you know, for someone to take their own life intentionally or unintentionally. So condolences to the family and yourself as well. And again, I want to approach this with the utmost respect. Do you feel like that could have been you at some point in your life?
Yeah, you know, this person that passed away, he was a friend of mine in college. I haven't spoken to him in years, but I got the news a couple of weeks back, you know, via social media. Obviously it's a tragedy, but nothing happens out of order in life. And, you know, I say this with the utmost respect and condolences as well. So we have to sit back and reflect of these things. And, you know, so was it this? I don't know exactly. You know, it wasn't the right moment to ask why it happened, what exactly happened. All I know, it was an overdose. You know, was it a suicide or not? I don't know. But, you know, for me, they're connected. If someone's overdosing on something, they probably have suicidal tendencies because it comes back to a lack of self-worth or self-value. And in these kind of situations, I always think, like, sometimes I think, am I doing enough to help people? Am I doing enough to get the message out of empowering people to know that life is wonderful, life's on the way, not in the way? You know, that situation hit, even though I haven't spoken to this person in maybe a decade, it just makes you wonder, like, you know, is there something that I could have done, or we could have done as society to prevent these things? Because unfortunately, this year, these things have been increasing, especially in a younger age group, like 18 to 40. The suicide rate has increased a lot. Overdose has gone up with the lockdowns, alcohols and drugs. Domestic abuse has skyrocketed. So there's a lot of things going on that need to be shed light on so we can find better solutions. You know, for me, it's not about creating enemies. It's about creating solutions. Because we don't understand why someone is going through something, why they are doing that to themselves or to someone else. There's every action has a reaction and a consequence. Nothing is random. Every choice has a consequence. But what is the root of that, and what can we do to improve upon it? Now, what you asked about myself personally, was there a time that could have been me? I'm not sure I would have gone that far, but it could have been. I mean, we've all been in, maybe not, I cannot speak for everyone, but I can certainly say I've been in dark places before. I don't think I ever went to that level, but sometimes I was reckless. I would admit that. I definitely would admit that. There was a period in my life where I was very reckless. So, and sometimes that's all it takes. So, and why does that happen? It's just what I explained is the value. When we don't have value on self, and sometimes we don't even know what that means to have value on self. But when we find a purpose bigger than ourselves, we start realizing the gift that we each are, and how important it is to be as you mentioned to just now, this is just a physical, a great physical machine that we've been given, is our body. But inside of us lives our spirit, our soul. That's who we are. We're just using this as a tool to navigate through this magnificent world. If we get too attached to that and we forget about why we're even here, and we don't go on a journey of discovering how we can serve the world, then unfortunately these kind of things can happen. So it's very important to find our values, align with them, and then try and reach as many people as possible. But yeah, it could have been me. I mean, why couldn't it have been? If I did not find purpose in my life, that could have been me today. Like if I didn't go to chiropractic school 7 years ago, sometimes I say this jokingly, but it probably has some truth to it. Like going to chiropractic school probably saved my life. Even then, in the first year or two, I was making some silly mistakes with my own personal life and choices. Because a lot of the old patterns start coming back. They're still programmed, and it takes time to get rid of. And eventually, you start ironing the creases out. But if you don't go after something that's going to serve a vast number of people, that you feel like you're making a difference in your life of yourself and others, it's easy to slip and fall. It doesn't take much. And those old patterns are still wired in me. If I don't stay on purpose, I can see I'm sure I would end up doing the same things I was doing before. So I think it has to go down to finding purpose. It's a big key.
I think you're right. I think purpose leads to fulfillment. And if you're not doing that, you're really dying in some way, in one way or another. And I look at situations like that, and I do think like, man, that could have been me. It's like, yeah. What is the difference between being totally down and out and then that that final slip into that decision, or accidentally, unintentionally, just out of recklessness or despair or whatever it may be. It's like, I think we walk more of a fine line than we realize sometimes. And it's easy to take that for granted until something like that almost happens to you or happens to someone It kind of like, it's a wake-up call. Like, man, what am I doing? Like, I knew that person, so.
Yeah, it's true. And I think, like, even if we are caught up in, if someone's listening to this and they're caught up in these kind of things, be grateful for where you are right now. Because I can look back to a time where, I remember like I spun out on the highway and there's like 50 cars, like 3 18-wheelers going by, and somehow none of them hit me. And I still didn't wake up at that time. There was more tragedies that came along down the line. So something is keeping us all. So those of us that maybe think, oh man, I've done so much wrong. No, take it as a blessing that you're still here right now, and do something with your life now, because something's keeping you alive. You have a greater purpose. Otherwise, we're not, anyone that's alive right now, there's a reason why we're here. It's not random. There's something within us that we have to share and accomplish. So it's we have to bring that out. Yeah.
That's deep. So where do you find strength? You know, what do you feel you're living for ultimately?
Well, today I hope there's some more sunlight because I want to go outside. But no, ultimately, what I'm living for. I mean, you know, when you think about purpose itself, like what is the purpose of life? Is there a purpose? It's a great question. As we're talking about this in some depth, what am I living for? I'm living for the experience of what comes in every moment. Do I know what's going to come in every moment? Not really. I mean, we have a perception that seems to be quite accurate. Like we know if I walk outside and I walk down the street, I'm pretty sure I can have some foresight into what will come. What I'm really living for is to see each individual, starting with myself, bring out the blueprint of their soul into the world, so we can gift each other with our magnificence. Because it's when each of us individually shine, each of us brings out our own weird, unique, nonsensical, fun, powerful, transforming impact, is when we can truly have joy, have fun, and we can see I believe that we're living in one of the greatest times in history. None of us know how the coming years will play out. The only thing we know is the present and the past. But we can only build a future by becoming alignment with the present and the past. Not to become attached with the past, but to appreciate it, to see the flaws and the benefits and drawbacks to each situation, to bring that resilience, the stability, courage, and clarity in the present, and to build a world that our children, grandchildren, and beyond will look back at us and say, you know what? They made a difference. Those people in 2020, they weren't too bad after all.
Yeah, especially given the circumstance. Oh man, we got our work cut out for us, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful time. It's easy, you know. This is a great reminder for myself and to anyone who's listening. It's easy to get caught up in the drama, but remember that it's just a drama. This year, we don't need the soaps on TV. We don't need the Hollywood movies. We are the actors in the movie. You can't write a script better than this. It's a tragedy. It's a comedy. You got romance. You've got everything. I mean, it's a thriller. Like you got horror. I mean, you got it all. You know,
it's gonna end with a twist. I guarantee that.
Yeah, and then the happy ending. You know, the happy ending with the fairy. The fairy tale happy ending's coming.
Yeah.
I don't know when, but it will come. I always believe that humanity will prevail. History has taught us this. And history has also taught us that as intelligent of creatures that we are, we seem to keep repeating the same things. People, when this year transpired, people we were all shocked. I was too. But then when you actually sit down and look at, if you look at what's happened 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, we're actually literally repeating almost the same narrative. We've just changed the players. We have maybe fancier equipment, nicer clothes, change the hairstyle, but not really much has changed. We're just repeating the same cycles. This is very fascinating to me. But what people must realize as well is that the energy that's within us it's so profound. It's why most people, even in moments of despair, find a way to thrive. It's this is a very special time, and for those of us who upgrade ourselves, what I call spiritually, we won't have any issues. We won't get affected by anything around us. The frequencies that change, uh, whatever may be floating around in the air, whatever, we will be fine. I truly believe that it's when we have to increase our vibration. This is vital in this time, because when we are empowered, when we are at the state of love, not we can be loving, but the state of love means we find balance between, we're able to see the good and bad in everything. Um, we we raise our vibration to such a high level that the outer world doesn't have an effect on our inner world, and we become the conduit. We become the rocks of stability that people can look up to, and we can lift the vibration of the planet together. This is what's happening right now. This is unfortunately, if you only follow the mainstream, you won't see this. You just hear all the negativity, but simultaneously at the same time, same place, everywhere on the planet, there's this great energetic shift occurring, and we also need to shed light on that too, and marvel at this. What will come of it? Many people have made predictions, but it's going to be a special time. I don't know what it's going to come, but it's going to be a very, very amazing, unique time that we're all lucky to be a part of. So we just have to be patient. This is important. Be patient, raise our vibration, become love. You don't have to. I mean, you don't have to become love. You already are love. You just have to recognize that.
I like that. I think that's really how we make the transition on a personal level, and as a result on a collective level, from surviving to thriving. And I think the way I see things, we went from a state of, not being industrialized a couple hundred years ago to now we're super industrialized, and now our biggest struggle is in dealing with the comforts that we've created. So you kind of talk about being a victim or being a pioneer, and I think no matter what the struggle is, whether it's survival, whether it's the physical aspect of surviving and struggling forward, but there's also the mental aspect. There's now greater attacks on our consciousness and on our perceptions, and no matter what it is, it's kind of like a diamond. That pressure turns that coal or whatever mineral synthesis into a diamond. And I think no matter what, like you said, humanity will prevail. So it forces people to make that transition, to say, you know what, I can't take any more of this, to realize that their fear is no longer relevant, that I have to do something. And I think the more we're imposed upon and the more things come down over us, the greater we become.
Yeah, and we need to come out of the physical attachment. And what I mean by this is, like, we have race, education, nationality, gender, race, profession, blah blah blah. I mean, all these things are how we describe ourselves in the physical plane. But it's time to upgrade from the physical to level of the soul, the metaphysical level, but realize that we're all parts of one great consciousness, and that it's time to unite. All these things are just divided to most of the stories, I would say, because we'll just call them stories, because we'll just leave it at that for right now. But you can get the drift from my tone. Most of these stories are just designed to divide us. We can't fall for this. We can't fall into victimhood over and over and over again. It's just disempowering us. We have to rise above this, rise above the noise, rise to the level of the soul, to this metaphysical plane where these things become irrelevant. And when you're at this plane, all you have to do is you're able to see the beauty in life, rather than you can see how everything's woven together, like the yin yang symbol. It's not separate. It's all together. And don't fall prey and don't fall prey and don't fall to the traps that want to create this disillusion of our existence. We're in a magnificent existence.
What do you see as a path to mindfulness?
I
I
mean,
know it'll be different for each person, but what what is something in your experience that led you to that more mindful state, or what is maybe something that you practice that keeps you in that mindful state?
yeah, I think one of the biggest things is to stay in this state is, having gratitude. And I don't just mean just that plainly, because I'm sure people have heard this before. But what I mean by gratitude is really appreciating the flaws in yourself, in the world, in others. This is very important. And also understanding that there is a hidden order to this universe, and that everything is happening on purpose. We may not be able to understand in the moment why something is happening to you or to someone else or whatnot, or in the world, but understand that there's something going on, and we have to find what it is that is going to benefit us from all of this. Doesn't mean that you don't stand up for what you think is right. It doesn't mean you don't stand up for your values. It doesn't mean that you give in. Like, for example, if you're doing meditation, you're doing yoga, you're eating well, you're doing breath work. I love these things. These things help me a lot. Like, I love chiropractic care. I mean, I love all kinds of stuff, right? I mean, everyone's got their method to stay in alignment, stay in tune. But we really need to see that life is always working in our favor. And this is key. And also understanding that, in my opinion, nobody is born evil. We all are innately a loving being within our soul. A lot of times what we are seeing in people's nature is conditioned and educated into them. It's not their natural essence. So it's important to have mercy upon each other in this time. Otherwise, we'll just slaughter each other. It's as difficult as that is. Even sometimes for me, it's difficult for me to have that, some of the things that are going on. But we have to understand that in mass confusion will lead to mass clarity with time. So having gratitude for the process is key, whether it's business, whether it's life, whether it's world events. Love the process, have gratitude, because you can't grow unless you're grateful for where you are. You're going to create an energy block and you'll stay stuck there for a long time. So why would you do that? That's stupidity.
Yeah, I think we take a few things for granted, like even being in poverty in the U.S., which I'm not making light of. It's not easy. I grew up basically impoverished, so I know firsthand it's not easy. But even being in that situation in the United States, you're still more wealthy and better off than like 70% of the rest of the world. And I think we forget these things, like having that perspective, knowing where you really are at this place in time, at this place geographically, wherever you may be in the world. I think that can be a source of motivation and enlightenment. It's like you said, in your own words, life is happening for you, not to you.
Yeah, it's like, as you mentioned that, it just reminded me when I went to Haiti the first time in 2015. I went to a very poor town, and we go from the West, most of us from the States, few people are from Europe, and we think, oh, we're going to go help these people. No, we had it all wrong, mate. They were helping us. And why I say that is we went there, right? and we did help them. We gave them free chiropractic service, whatnot. But the reason I say they helped us, I mean, you got homeboy who doesn't even have pants on, has a super bright smile, bright white smile with perfect teeth. And we've got everything coming from the West, and we're still miserable. These guys have nothing, and they're playing on the streets. They're playing soccer in the streets, just happy as ever. Of course, their life is not. They know they're living in a shack, man. Come on.
Yeah.
But the genuine authenticity in the way they greeted people and the spark of life that was there. I mean, a lot of people in the West don't have that with all the material stuff they've got. So that's why when I came back, I remember I told the doctor, it's like, they taught me a lesson, and they taught us a lesson that you can still have joy in any form of, in any stature of life. And they have everything and they're still happy, and we have nothing. They have hardly anything in a materialistic sense, and they're still so joyful. We have so much in the West, and we're all miserable and fighting with each other. So it doesn't actually make any sense. So
yeah, and I think we're in that struggle of comfort, and you can't buy happiness. You can't manufacture happiness, so that in a way they have what we don't have. And that's probably how things take a turn by default. But how important do you think it is for people to get out, to travel, to keep learning,
I think it should be a requirement. Because
anytime I've traveled, it's just like, I look back and I'm like, what am I doing? I don't want to go back. I just want to keep going somewhere new. I might want to, I went to Puerto Rico, and it's like, I could stay there for months, and then like I have the desire to, now I want to go somewhere else and stay there for a few months. And it's just, I think we're meant to travel and meet other groups of people with different cultures, different food, different architecture. It does something to you.
Absolutely, it does. I think it's, for me, I'm so grateful to the travels I've been able to do in my life. I probably would have had a lot more money in my bank account if I didn't travel as much, but that's okay.
Have a couple extra suits, more expensive car, but hey, you can't trade for experience.
Yeah, that's true. It's all about balance in life, right? But for me, from a young age, playing football or soccer, I was always interwoven into the global world, the global culture. I was always fascinated by geography. I learned the geography of the world because of soccer or football, because it just forced me to, where's this person from? Oh, I never heard of that place. Look it up. I'll find out, all the information about that place. So it just became and then everywhere I went, it was like football or music was like a universal language. You just connect to people. It didn't matter where you're from, what you look like. You put a ball down, we all start playing. Yeah. I love that. That was amazing. And so from a young age, I've always been fascinated with different cultures, different people. I've always wanted to learn more. And you're completely right. We're meant to do this. I really think that it's the biggest thing is you have joy, you have fun, you're gaining experiences. And then the profoundness of it, expanding your horizons, you realize that they have a different color shirt on. They might have different food. They might speak a different language, but innately we are the same. Yeah. We can laugh together. We can dance together. We can share a meal together. And we realize that we're just brothers and sisters in this magnificent life. It's a wonderful experience. And there's something that we take away from each other, that we realize that we need each other. That's the profoundness of it, but it's just fun as well. I mean, we are social creatures in the era of separation that we are currently living in. We have to remind ourselves that human beings are social creatures. We thrive when we exchange with each other, whether it's time, resources, or just laughs and smiles. There's an energy shift that occurs within that. And everyone's different. You know, we have this whole conversation about extrovert, introvert. I think it's BS personally. We're all introverted at times. We're all extroverted at times. It's not a permanent condition. Nothing is permanent. When you look at the field of epigenetics, you know, look into like Bruce Lipton's work and many more, we know now that 99% of our beingness is not permanent. It's based on our lifestyle, our choices, our travels, our experiences, and things can shift and things can change. And that's why it's so vital to have experiences. The great yogis of the past weren't teaching it's a spiritual practice. The whole purpose of it is to experience life. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's through experiencing life, you figure out what's right and wrong. You figure out what's your purpose. You figure out your values. You figure out what to do. But if you have the same monotone experience day in, day out your whole life, you just become a robot of the system.
Yes.
Is that the purpose of life? I don't think so.
No, we're not meant to drone on. We're not meant to be boxed in or isolated by ourselves or confined to one place and experience for our whole life. And I think a lot of the ailments and dysfunctions that we see, like, you know, introversion or just being out of sorts with yourself, you know, being depressed and not knowing why, like, once you get out and experience something that makes you feel alive, you realize, like, that's it. That's the magic. That's the thing that keeps you feeling free and energized, you know?
Yeah. And I have this weird sensation, or I don't know what it is, addiction, or maybe it's just a natural, maybe I'm just more connected. I don't know. Or maybe I'm just crazy. Probably all of the above.
a little bit of everything.
But like in my life, I've always been attracted to, when I find someone, I mean, it's human nature, I think, you know, whether it's a woman or I'm always attracted to someone that's from a different country or a different place. It just, I don't know. It's very attractive to me. It's very, yeah. I think it's because it goes back to what you're talking about. We are all curious people. We are curious individuals, and we just want to explore and learn and discover. You know, we're the path of life, the path of mastery is also the path of discovery. If you don't have experiences, then what are you going to discover? You can't discover the same thing every day. That's kind of boring.
Yeah, no, and I think that hits on something deeply rooted in our nature, is that something new is an opportunity. Like a new experience equals a new opportunity every time. Because you may be, whether it's learning something or just traveling, you're going to integrate something new into yourself each time. Like new equals opportunity. So I think our body, our mind naturally seeks that. And I think it's just a process of evolution. And in that sense, we're all teachers to one another. Even if you're not a professional teacher, like we're just like kids. We all learn from each other all the time. So I know that's one of your top 3 values here. I'm cheating off the sheet a little bit, but travel, teach, and learn. I mean, I think you nailed it with that. Travel, teach, and learn. It's kind of hard not to feel fulfilled and alive and a sense of freedom in doing those things. So
yeah, I love that, man. I freaking love that. New equals opportunity. I got to paint that on the wall. Because awesome. It's the same thing, like a new obstruction, a new challenge, new opportunity. Let's go.
Yeah, that's it. You know, it's always some form of opportunity, some form of growth. So with that said, you're looking at, you know, like obviously expanding the podcast. It's already doing great, but expanding, growing that, doing speaking events, you know, putting this information out to help as many people as possible. With that said, what are you looking forward to the most in the near future?
I mean, there's, you know, the first thing that comes to my mind is having like a seminar. I'd like to put a seminar on. I think that'd be great. Mixture of music, mixture of I mean, different artists, professionals, doctors, speakers, entrepreneurs, and anyone really, extraordinary people. You don't have to have a title to be extraordinary. But expanding through my work, it's really just focusing on one at a time. Like the one person, each person is creating a quantum effect. Like, you know, when I take care of one person, it's going to create an effect. It's going to create a ripple effect that I know that with time, I won't be able to. I want to get to a point where, not for my ego, but for humanity, is, you know, I want to serve a vast number of people. You know, I'm excited about expanding my practice, and I want to have my own location soon. So I'm looking forward to that, because and I'm looking forward to the podcast. I mean, who knows what's going to come of that? It's just fun, you know. It's just fun sharing conversations.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have to use all the mediums we have at our disposal, whatever they may be. It may be new ones down the line. Who knows? I don't know. You know, writing books, making content. But the digital stuff is fantastic because it can reach people like this. That's why I love it.
Yep. No
but
cost
for me,
to produce. I mean, it's just, there you go.
Yeah. But for me, there's something special about being in front of an audience. That I mean, when I haven't done it as much, obviously first part of this year I did, but the last couple of months not as much. But that's just an high that is incredible.
Yeah.
It's something's different. And I'm sure it can be replicated in different ways, but I don't know. There's benefits to being online, you know, because you can see everyone on a Zoom call. No one can really hide. Like if you're in a room, someone can hide behind someone else. But it's kind of funny. So it goes both ways, you know, but the energy when you're up there, it's just different. I'm sure it's the same with athletes right now when they're playing in empty stadiums. That's why you see a lot of weird results right now, because I think they're not even like, oh, this top player lost or this team. But it's because the energy is not there. The crowd's not there.
Yeah.
Whether you're speaking or whether you're playing a sport, it's the same thing.
There's a, you know, each person has their own energetic field. I mean, they've been able to measure this now scientifically and observe that we have an energetic field that stems anywhere from like 5 to 25 meters out around us, like an actual electromagnetic energetic signature that's emanating from our body. So they can see that now. Before it was kind of hypothetical, but now we know, yes, we are literally producing an energetic field. And then there's a collective result that happens when we come together. I mean, we project a field in a different way, in a huge way that fuels sporting events, that fuels, you know, there's speculation that they used to be able to move things with just frequency using, you know, harmonizing together. And again, we can't prove it yet, but we see weird things can happen in a positive way when people are channeling energy together. So it's interesting that you bring that up. And I think there is an energy to the room when you're speaking to a crowd, and just as you're giving out, it's coming back, you know, and it's just kind of cycles through, creates
but one
that
thing
experience.
I 100% agree with you, but one thing I do want to mention is, even if it's one person in front of you, it's not one person. It's actually hundreds, maybe thousands, even millions, because that is what affecting that one person's life with what you say or what you do in a positive way will have a ripple effect that we can't measure.
Yeah.
So even in this time where you might be talking to a screen, or you might be having one-on-one conversation instead of to a group, in whatever scenario may be, remember that your effect is still massive. Don't downplay any situation. Even the one-on-one interaction has a vast effect. So don't forget that.
Yeah, we're at a point that's a great point to bring up, because we're in a time where it's so immense, we don't know how many people we could potentially affect. I mean, this video could go viral for some reason. Yeah, I don't expect it to, but I expect, somebody's going to watch, and it's just going to have that chain reaction, that ripple effect. And you never do know what's going to resonate with people in such a way that it turns out you impact, 20 million people with one video, and then that goes on exponentially. So I think we need to take full advantage of this time. I mean, that's extremely important to recognize and appreciate. This is where we are right now. And I think some people are stuck in that fear mode, and they're afraid to put out some content. They're afraid to have that conversation and say what they really feel or what they really mean. And I think that's, a disservice to yourself and everyone else. So put it out there,
Alan Watts. Yeah, Alan Watts said, this always comes up to my mind when anyone talks about this. I listened to him several years back, and he said anything that we're thinking about, you might think it's out there, it's abstract, it's weird, whatever. Like no one else is going to like it, no one else is going to think about it. But any thought that comes into our mind, if we're having that thought, that means millions of other people are having that thought too. So we have to always remember that we're not alone. Especially this year, there's times where I felt alone. I'm sure other people have felt alone too, based on wherever we were. Maybe we weren't able to move around as much as we wanted to or whatnot. But we have to remember that we're not alone, that we all are connected in this massive web of interconnectedness across this planet and across this universe. So even a thought can change the world. So if you aren't able to go out there and speak your mind, create content, you should do it. I encourage you to do it. But if you aren't quite able to do it yet, even your thoughts, even writing things down, even speaking to yourself in the mirror, it's going to have a vibratory effect on the planet. So no action is too small.
So you mentioned epigenetics, and that it makes me think of just kind of following the rope on the problems, looking at how could things be better. And I think most of the solutions are very simple. I mean, inherently it's the opposite of the problem, but like, I think there's a deliberate, and I don't want to get too conspiratorial here, but I think there's a systematic approach to keeping us kind of boxed in, keeping us from tapping into that power. And one thing that really opened my eyes to epigenetics, I believe it was Bruce Lipton, was talking about a controlled study in which they exposed mice to certain circumstances in a controlled lab setting. And then somehow mice that weren't in the study, totally different part of the world, were also affected, and their behavior began to change over time. So there was like a, invisible connection between the control group and then literally just mice everywhere. So kind of that string theory approach to things, that not only do we have the potential to change and adapt and evolve right now and activate certain parts of our DNA, and whether that's like bringing out the strengths or experience of our ancestors, I don't know. I don't understand it. I'm not going to pretend to, but one thing I do understand is how much we don't understand yet, and how much we aren't being taught about this. But I think there's a remote connection there within our genetic lineage as well. Like I think
so too.
Invisible effect.
I don't think there's any doubt about what you're saying, and it's been proven with studies now. We didn't know about it before, but now we have the science to back it up. In 1954, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile barrier. In the months after that, several people did. They never met Roger Bannister. They didn't talk to Roger Bannister. They don't even know who he was. But the consciousness shifted.
They knew it was possible, and that's that shift in perception, and maybe there's an energetic component to it as well that we just haven't got around to understanding.
Yeah, and even if they didn't know, it would have. Even if the people didn't know that he broke it, I guarantee you someone would have broke it without knowing that he broke it because it was in the ether.
Yep. I'm a firm believer. I was thinking, I wrote something down the other day, and I'm not gonna get it quite right, but I was just thinking about these things and how it seems like we're always seeking to understand everything from a technical perspective. And in doing so, we oftentimes miss the mark. I was just thinking to myself, again, I'm not going to get it perfectly right, but I wrote it down somewhere. It's, the man who seeks to understand the waves ends up at the bottom of the ocean. But the man who understands the waves watches from the shore. Something like that. So it's like, if you would just sit back, you could learn so much more than you realize from that neutral position, than to go and try and measure and calculate and prove, and for what, for who. It's going to change. The data is going to change next year and the next year, and it's like, that's great. It's great to have a scientific fundamental understanding for certain things, but it's also great to have that higher level intuitive understanding. And I think oftentimes that's what's missing.
And even when you look at science itself, like Peter North said, the only constant of science is that it's constantly changing. And I would even take that further and say, how much do we actually even know? I mean, 1%, 10%, like what do we even know? I don't think we even understand everything, how everything even works. We have if you look at it from a broad perspective, we have a very good understanding. Do we understand everything? Probably not. I don't think so.
No.
And I don't think we're meant to. I think we'll go psychotic if we try to figure everything out.
Yeah, I think that's the point, is like, we don't have to know everything. Like, stop trying to know everything. It's always going to be changing anyway. Like, Earth could get obliterated tomorrow. I hope not, but I'm just saying, major stream of asteroids comes through and just obliterates Earth. Okay, then what? We wasted all this time trying to cultivate a trivial understanding for the sake of, instead of actually doing and being and getting somewhere. So I think a lot of people live their life the same way, and they never actually tap into their being and live. And that, just saying this reminds me of the name of your podcast. Again, back to being. Like, we need to get back to being. That's it. And when we do that, the rest will come. Like, the understanding will come, the progress will come. But
I can't be you and you can't be me. So just simply be.
I like that. Well, man, we've covered a lot. I think you answered a lot of my questions inherently in the conversation. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Any key points for the audience to take away from this conversation?
I think I've really shared all of it. But I mean, we can talk for hours, I'm sure. Yeah. But I would just, as a closing, I think I mentioned a little bit before, but just to remind everyone that, I mean, life is a gift. It's a gift. So treat each moment as a gift, and recognize that the dramas at play are may not be as significant as we make them out to be. Find a way. If you don't know where to go, reach out to me, reach out to Eric. There's many people like us. There's something waiting for you, and just go after it. And this time that we're in right now it's unbelievable. I've already touched on it, but just keep the faith, keep going forward, trust in yourself, have trust in life, and know that when it's all said and done, and you look back in 80 years' time, that your grandchildren and great-grandchildren will say that you left a legacy, you left a mark in the world, and you'll you'll be able to look back and be proud. So just enjoy it, man. What a if you want me to tell you why we were here right now, I don't know, but we've got to make the most of it.
Yeah. I think that's it. It's a process. I don't fully understand it. I don't need to understand everything to realize like this matters. There's some bigger evolutionary process going on, I think, on a cosmic level, spiritual level, and everything's for a reason. I mean, I truly believe that and life hasn't been great all the time, through the good times and the bad, I think is when I've really cultivated that. And
yeah, and in 10
I'm
years
glad.
time, we're going to look back at this and we're going to laugh at it, at the world right now. We're going to say what a incredible, how wonderful that time was, and look what it's led to now.
Yeah.
That's
And
what
it's
we're going to do.
all the negative, quote unquote negative, it's just so silly to look back on. If you look back on like the hysteria, what people were afraid of in the 20s, it's like, what? It's like a corny sci-fi movie. When you look back, you're like, dude, people actually wasted their time and energy, stressing about this stuff. To us now it's trivial, but I think that's a good point. Like, when you look back, it's like looking back at elementary school or something when you thought something was a big deal. You just realize it wasn't even close. So,
Yeah.
but there's real stuff that happens too, and I'm glad I chose to suffer through whatever temporary circumstance may have been ruining my life at one point in time, or I felt like it was. It's gonna pass, whoever's listening right now, it's going to pass. You'll be all right. Just got to stick through it and just keep your head up.
Yep.
Well, Mr. Bhanderi, Dr. Marwyn, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, and I think people will find a lot of value in it.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it. Have a good one.
Yep, I'm going to read us out here. You guys know the mantra by now. Let's just get straight to it. You have the power. You are the solution. Resist, defy, object. Take care of your world.